a third of Urantians. These Confucian precepts, while perpetuating the best of the past, were somewhat inimical to the very Chinese spirit of investigation that had produced those achievements which were so venerated. The influence of these doctrines was unsuccessfully combated both by the imperial efforts of Qin Shi Huangdi and by the teachings of Mo Ti, who proclaimed a brotherhood founded not on ethical duty, but on the love of God. He sought to rekindle the ancient quest for new truth, but his teachings failed before the vigorous opposition of the disciples of Confucius. Like many other spiritual and moral teachers, both Confucius and Lao Tzu were eventually deified by their followers in those spiritually dark ages of China which intervened between the decline and perversion of the Taoist faith and the coming of the Buddhist missionaries from India. During these spiritually decadent centuries, the religion of the yellow race degenerated into a pitiful theology wherein swarmed devils, dragons, and evil spirits, all betokening the returning fears of the unenlightened mortal mind. And China, once at the head of human society because of an advanced religion, then fell behind because of temporary failure to progress in the true path of the development of that God-consciousness which is indispensable to the true progress, not only of the individual mortal, but also of the intricate and complex civilizations which characterize the advance of culture and society on an evolutionary planet of time and space. 7. Gautama Siddhartha. Contemporary with Lao Tzu and Confucius in China, another great teacher of truth arose in India. Gautama Siddhartha was born in the 6th century before Christ in the northern Indian province of Nepal. His followers later made it appear that he was the son of a fabulously wealthy ruler, but in truth he was the heir apparent to the throne of a petty chieftain who ruled by sufferance over a small and secluded mountain valley in the southern Himalayas. Gautama formulated those theories which grew into the philosophy of Buddhism after 6 years of the futile practice of yoga. Siddhartha made a determined but unavailing fight against the growing caste system. There was a lofty sincerity and a unique unselfishness about this young prophet prince that greatly appealed to the men of those days. He detracted from the practice of seeking individual salvation through physical affliction and personal pain, and he exhorted his followers to carry his gospel to all the world. Amid the confusion and extreme cult practices of India, the saner and more moderate teachings of Gautama came as a refreshing relief. He denounced gods, priests, and their sacrifices, but he too failed to perceive the personality of the one universal. Not believing in the existence of individual human souls, Gautama, of course, made a valiant fight against the time-honored belief in transmigration of the soul. He made a noble effort to deliver men from fear, to make them feel at ease and at home in the great universe, but he failed to show them the pathway to that real and supernal home of ascending mortals, paradise, and to the expanding service of eternal existence. Gautama was a real prophet, and had he heeded the instruction of the hermit Godad, he might have aroused all India by the inspiration of the revival of the Salem gospel of salvation by faith. Godad was descended through a family that had never lost the traditions of the Melchizedek missionaries. At Benares, Gautama founded his school, and it was during its 2nd year that a pupil, Botan, imparted to his teacher the traditions of the Salem missionaries about the Melchizedek covenant with Abraham. And while Siddhartha did not have a very clear concept of the universal Father, he took an advanced stand on salvation through faith, simple belief. He so declared himself before his followers, and began sending his students out in groups of 60 to proclaim to the people of India the glad tidings of free salvation, that all men, high and low, can attain bliss by faith in righteousness and justice. Gautama's wife believed her husband's gospel and was the founder of an order of nuns. His son became his successor and greatly extended the cult. He grasped the new idea of salvation through faith, but in his later years wavered regarding the Salem gospel of divine favor through faith alone, and in his old age his dying words were, "Work out your own salvation." When proclaimed at its best, Gautama's gospel of universal salvation, free from sacrifice, torture, ritual, and priests, was a revolutionary and amazing doctrine for its time, and it came surprisingly near to being a revival of the Salem gospel. It brought succor to millions of despairing souls, and, notwithstanding its grotesque perversion during later centuries, it still persists as the hope of millions of human beings. Siddhartha taught far more truth than has survived in the modern cults bearing his name. Modern Buddhism is no more the teachings of Gautama Siddhartha than is Christianity the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. 8. The Buddhist Faith. To become a Buddhist, one merely made public profession of the faith by reciting the refuge. I take my refuge in the Buddha. I take my refuge in the doctrine. I take my refuge in the brotherhood. Buddhism took origin in a historic person, not in a myth. Gautama's followers called him Sasta, meaning master or teacher. While he made no superhuman claims for either himself or his teachings, his disciples early began to call him the Enlightened One, the Buddha, and later on, Sakyamuni Buddha. The original Gospel of Gautama was based on the Four Noble Truths. 1. The Noble Truths of Suffering. 2. The Origins of Suffering. 3. The Destruction of Suffering. 4. The Way to the Destruction of Suffering. Closely linked to the doctrine of suffering and the escape therefrom was the philosophy of the Eightfold Path: right views, aspirations, speech, conduct, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and contemplation. It was not Gautama's intention to attempt to destroy all effort, desire, and affection in the escape from suffering. Rather was his teaching designed to picture to mortal man the futility of pinning all hope and aspirations entirely on temporal goals and material objectives. It was not so much that love of one's fellows should be shunned, as that the true believer should also look beyond the associations of this material world to the realities of the eternal future. The moral commandments of Gautama's preachment were 5 in number. 1. You shall not kill. 2. You shall not steal. 3. You shall not be unchaste. 4. You shall not lie. 5. You shall not drink intoxicating liquors. There were several additional or secondary commandments whose observance was optional with believers. Siddhartha hardly believed in the immortality of the human personality. His philosophy only provided for a sort of functional continuity. He never clearly defined what he meant to include in the doctrine of nirvana. The fact that it could theoretically be experienced during mortal existence would indicate that it was not viewed as a state of complete annihilation. It implied a condition of supreme enlightenment and supernal bliss, wherein all fetters binding man to the material world had been broken. There was freedom from the desires of mortal life, and deliverance from all danger of ever again experiencing incarnation. According to the original teachings of Gautama, salvation is achieved by human effort, apart from divine help. There is no place for saving faith or prayers to superhuman powers. Gautama, in his attempt to minimize the superstitions of India, endeavored to turn men away from the blatant claims of magical salvation. And in making this effort, he left the door wide open for his successors to misinterpret his teaching, and to proclaim that all human striving for attainment is distasteful and painful. His followers overlooked the fact that the highest happiness is linked with the intelligent and enthusiastic pursuit of worthy goals, and that such achievements constitute true progress in cosmic self-realization. The great truth of Siddhartha's teaching was his proclamation of a universe of absolute justice. He taught the best godless philosophy ever invented by mortal man. It was the ideal humanism, and most effectively removed all ground